This is the Stand Ups Throw Down MMA podcast. That's right, another podcast that brings together comedians and fighters to talk all things UFC, MMA, and sometimes a little bit more. I'm your host, as always, Bryan Lacey. Thanks for joining me. So welcome back to the Stand Ups Throw Down MMA podcast with me again, your host, Bryan Lacey. Thank you for joining me. And it's fight week, ladies and gentlemen. Fight week for UFC 189. A very exciting time. And in honour of Mini Mendez fighting Conor McGregor, I've kind of done a mini podcast for you, like a stepping stone to next week's big fight on Saturday night. Basically, the reason it's a mini podcast, and I don't mean that in terms of time, it's about its usual length, but I mean in terms of guests. I was supposed to have two guests on this week. One of them was supposed to be Jake Matthews, the UFC fighter, the up-and-coming UFC fighter who's fighting at UFC Glasgow in a couple of weeks. He's training on the other side of the world, so it was hard to find times to fit in with his training. So rather than leave you without a podcast this week, I've stretched to extra time our other marvellous guest. That's right, the marvellous Milo McCabe, a brilliant comedian, good mate of mine, and we've talked all things UFC, UFC 189, some of the news around it, and he's got some very interesting thoughts that have had my brain racking and bouncing around this room in terms of the depths that could be going on to the UFC could be going to make sure that they look after their golden egg, or at least give them the opportunity to give these big fights that the big fight that they lost a couple of weeks ago against Aldo. Very interesting stuff. Really appreciate Milo jumping in and allowing me to use him for a little bit longer than I usually would. So I appreciate that, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy that interview. Before we crack on with that, a huge thank you to my podcast sponsors again, MMA UK. Lovely people, brilliant working with you, and truly appreciate all the stuff you're doing around sponsoring the podcast and getting the word out there. Very much appreciated. Also, I should say, welcome to MMA UK to Tony Dunn. That's right, my last guest, the comedian on my last podcast, has joined MMA UK as a writer, and he'll be putting up some articles. He's already done one, which is brilliant. Very funny man, very astute brain for the MMA game. So looking forward to what he comes out with. Also, another thank you, well, in fact, the first thank you to another MMA UK writer, a guy called Miles Painter. Been doing some great work with MMA UK. Started this series called Across the Pond, which basically profiles lesser known fighters. You get to know a bit more about them, their background, their journey, see a few of their fights. Great work from Miles. And he said he's going to tie into the podcast and the fighters that I get on, he'll do profiles on, so we can get some more support for the fighters and some more support for the podcast. Really appreciate that, Miles. Love what you do, and very appreciative that you're including the podcast in that, so thank you again. On top of that, ladies and gentlemen, there is chances for you to win prizes. That's right, this has turned from a podcast to a game show. We've been contacted by Manchester Beer Keller. That's right, Manchester Beer Keller. You can find them on Facebook /Manchester Beer Keller. I will put up the link, and they are giving away a signed Conor McGregor photo ahead of UFC 189, and it's basically just go like their page and share the post, and you're in with a chance of winning this article, which, depending on the result of the fight, could be worth an absolute fortune overnight. So let's just find out exactly what happens on Saturday. So yeah, I'll put the link up to that. Go to Manchester Beer Keller on Facebook, like their page, share the post that the prizes, the competition is in, and you're in with a chance of winning a signed Conor McGregor photo. So I'll leave you with that, ladies and gentlemen. I will again give you the details at the end of the podcast, and on top of that, I will share and tweet it on the Facebook and Twitter. So get involved, that's what I'm saying. You never know, you got to be in it to win it. That's all I'm saying. All right, I'll leave it at that. Ladies and gentlemen, let's crack on with this podcast. I'm delighted to bring back the first person who came on this podcast for me, and a good mate of mine. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Milo McCabe. And it's Bryan Lacey with the Stand Ups Throw Down MMA podcast, and it is the return of the McCabe. Milo McCabe, thanks for coming back.
My pleasure.
You were the first guest on this podcast, and we're at episode 14 now, Milo. We've lasted 14 episodes. Can you believe that?
Yeah. It's the first guest. I've set the ball rolling, and I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised in the slightest. You've had some great guests on, and it's only going to get better because I know what you're like. Never give up.
Something like that, I think. Well, look, let's get cracking. I wanted you on because all this stuff has kicked off. The Aldo McGregor fight, and I've been sort of hanging on very tightly to this hype train of McGregor. I just don't want it derailed. I think that my heart is ruling my head at the minute. But I've brought you on as sort of the MMA Mr. Gravity because you're gonna. I've got a feeling from the way you've been talking about the McGregor Mendez fight in particular that you're going to bring us back down to earth. I mean, what's your thoughts about what's happened over the last couple of weeks with the loss of Aldo, and now we're looking at Mendez taking on McGregor?
Right. Well, this game for the UFC. That's sort of my base viewpoint. Is all they're thinking about money. So they've poured so much money into publicising this fight, as it's been said. You know, they're only going to break even apparently if they get 1 million pay-per-views. So it's all about money and publicity and everything moving forward from this fight. So now Aldo's gone. It's my first thought when they chose Mendez was, well, that is a bold gamble. And I thought that because, Mendez wins. Say Mendez wins, which personally I think he's capable of doing. I mean, Mendez represents the wrestling threat that apparently Conor hasn't faced yet. And Mendez represents the biggest exponent of that. But how Mendez wins, there's no interest in Aldo Mendez 3. There's none. So what are the UFC doing? They're throwing everything on McGregor beating Mendez. And then I had another think about it, because it's like, I would have instinctively put Frankie Edgar in against McGregor, because stylistically that would seem like a fight that McGregor might have an easier time with. However, I think Frankie Edgar is so hot right now that they're thinking, well, if Frankie Edgar possibly legitimately could have a better chance of beating McGregor. However, Mendez wins, right? Then they can't do anything with Mendez Aldo 3. So what I think will happen is, if Mendez wins, which, as I said, there's a very real chance of that happening, what they're going to do is they are going to set up an immediate interim rematch, which I think is why they've Dublin already. Now, they booked Dublin shortly. Aldo came up as injured. So I think what they do is Mendez wins, they book an immediate interim rematch, and they turn the whole Mendez-McGregor, they turn that into Lesnar and Mir. Because I don't know if you remember, but the Lesnar-Mir rematch was like UFC 100. So Mir was the upset there. They built up for the rematch, and I think they're counting on McGregor winning is perfect, obviously, because they immediately have the McGregor-Aldo match that they wanted, and there's even more to it. However, Mendez wins. Mendez-McGregor 2 turns into, I think, Mir-Lesnar 2. The publicity is McGregor sort of like reacting to a loss in the face of all his bravado. In the same, possibly in a similar way that Lesnar did in the build-up videos to Lesnar Mir 2, you know, getting furious, not being able to deal with it, walking out of the room when a video's played back, that kind of thing. I mean, that's my take on it, because I'm looking at it from the Fertitta brothers' point of view. I mean, they don't want Mendez to win, but if they do, they're going to make money out of it. That's sort of my take on it at the moment. I mean, but you can understand Frankie Edgar, who on paper really is a more legitimate threat. He is, but then I think with McGregor's style, Mendez might be a more legitimate threat. So it's a little bit confusing. What do you think?
Oh my goodness! Do you know what? That MMA maths has just got my my head bubbling, because all the cogs turning, all the contingency plans. Because the fear is, you're exactly right. They've literally put everything on McGregor. They were hoping it was going to.
They don't want Mendez Aldo 3, do they?
They don't. They really don't. They really don't. It was a good last fight. It was an enjoyable fight, but it's not. It's not got everyone tingling, and it's not selling the gate that the McGregor Aldo fight has. But I never even thought about that, because I saw Ireland pop up. I saw they confirmed that, and that's well too early for Aldo to come back from a rib injury and have a full camp. for that. So that as a safety net for whatever happens next is a crazily beautiful thought, my friend. And tying it in with the Lesnar Mir fight, that's I can see exactly what you're saying. Yeah, that even if he gets beaten decisively, well, that still make it hard to sell. But if like Mir lost to the knee bar in his first, I mean Lesnar lost to the knee bar in his first one. But yeah, it was still a fight that people wanted to see because of what happened next. So that could be a very astute perspective on them laying the grounds for a contingency plan if this goes wrong, because they've completely backed McGregor. The whole machine is behind McGregor. But if Mendez, and like you said, there's a very good chance he's favourite with the bookies to take this. If Mendez
isn't favourite.
Is he not favourite anymore?
Mendez, when I got on Mendez, when he started, was outsider. Like, there was some funny odds on this card. I've gone, personally, if you're talking betting, there was a triple on that card. It's gone down now, but when the card first came out, Gunnar Nelson was 17 to 10. Robbie Lawler was about 2 to 1, and Mendez, when I got on him, he was nearly 2 to 1.
Right.
I don't know if you can mention betting sites, but it was, can I?
Yeah, well, you'd say what you want, mate. Yes, yeah, no problem at all.
Yeah, all right, cool. That was Bet365. So I got on that triple at 20 to 1. When 20 to 1 for the 3 to come in. Mendez was the outsider. Conor's the favourite, and at the moment, as it stands, I had a look at Paddy Power. I think Conor's about 1 to 2 or 8 to 15, and Mendez is about 13 to 10. So Mendez is still the outsider.
Wow, because when they initially opened the books, there was talks in Vegas of
so nobody thinks Mendez is going to win.
Wow, that's crazy.
The only person Mendez has lost to is Aldo. That's it.
I know. He's also got the most knockouts in featherweight. I know, second most knockouts in featherweight fights. That's with the WEC as well. I think he's knocked out 5 of his opponents. So for a little guy, he's certainly a threat. And Conor gets hit. Let's not argue with that. He's been hit by everybody he's fought. He's baited them in. He puts his head up nice and straight, and he does get caught. But he's never been caught by anyone as stocky or dangerous as Mendez. I'm still spinning from that thought of the safety net. I think that's a beautiful call there, mate. That's a scary thought as well, that they're taking, that they may see McGregor falling as well. I mean, with the Mendez Aldo thing, let's just go back a step as well, because the initial reports were Aldo had a bruised rib, and then the UFC came out and they said he only has a bruised rib but he's pulling out anyway. And then they showed the and I don't know if you saw this, the x-rays. Aldo actually released his x-rays to show that what the UFC said wasn't true. They were basically lying, and he has a broken rib, and they were trying to force him to fight with it.
Yeah, but you know why they're lying though, don't you? Because they need to make it an interim bout.
Absolutely.
They need to, and it doesn't make sense, because it's not like he's been like Dominic Cruz and he's been out for years. And then what they're saying, they have to kind of discredit him a little bit and say, well, he's pulled out of 5 fights, so and it's not about that. It's about money. It's about keeping the importance. It's proper like MMA Game of Thrones stuff.
So I'm guessing the Fertittas are the Lannisters, yeah?
I guess Mendez is Tyrion Lannister.
Oh, very good, sir. Very good.
And I think McGregor is that prick who tied up Alfie Allen and chopped his balls off.
Oh God, that's a scary prick. Yeah. Oh, nasty stuff. Look, yeah, that makes sense as far as the Aldo the side, but they didn't do him any favours, did they? Because he is basically their pound for pound champion at the minute with John Jones gone.
Oh, it's all about the money. It's all about the money with them. I mean, and I guarantee if McGregor comes out injury free from a loss, they're going to turn around to Aldo's camp and say, listen, we're going to do this rematch, and then you can fight the winner for a unification bout. But they will not do Aldo Mendez. Worst case, they'll set it up, and then something will happen, and they'll pull it. So either Mendez, if they have to set up Mendez Aldo, I don't think they will, but if they have to, I reckon Mendez drops out or they won't. They'll just do an immediate interim rematch, and they'll find some excuse for it. But that's what I think happens.
I mean, we're talking very much as if, from this perspective, as if McGregor is going to lose this fight. That's your take, and you think Mendez has got enough to take this against McGregor, yeah?
I really do. I mean, I've played it out in my head, and I keep going back to that Max Holloway fight, and it just shows you how good Max Holloway is. And I mean, and he's sort of borne that out in his results since, hasn't he? I don't think has he lost since?
He's not lost since. No, he's not lost since. No, he did Cub Swanson in his last one. Remember, he absolutely torched him.
Exactly. And I don't know. It's the team alpha male effect as well. I mean, look at TJ Dillashaw came through, and nobody expected that. You know, I just everyone's just sleeping
on Mendez, yeah.
Everyone. I think so. Just unless there's something I don't know.
Well, what you're saying to me is, and that's why I was kind of shocked about the odds. I don't do much betting. I don't really understand it. I'm not very good at it. Let's be honest. So I was, but from Twitter and Facebook, a lot of people are calling this as the as basically this will be the truth, as in McGregor is going to go up against a wrestler unlike any he's ever fought. Like you said, he's team alpha male, a strong striker as well. The way he sets up his takedowns, if you look at some of his fights, like the Lamas fight, Mendez Lamas, he basically, when he was going in for takedowns, if he faked a takedown, he'd come up with these ridiculous uppercuts. So he uses his wrestling to set up his striking, like some other wrestlers do it the other way around. They use their striking to set up their wrestling, but and he's so powerful on top. It's going to be a real test for McGregor, and that's the thing. And like you said, it's the question that everybody's bouncing around. The only people, if you look at the top 10, there's a brilliant article, and I'll direct people to it on Vice by a guy called Jack Slack. I don't know if you've read much of his stuff.
Is it Fightland?
Fightland, that's exactly right. He does. He's got an article called "Conor McGregor is the Future of Mixed Martial Arts," but it breaks down why Mendez is such a what basically breaks down the path that Conor McGregor has been given rather than he's taken. He's had 5 fights in the UFC, and out of the top 10, he's not yet fought a single wrestler, which everybody is talking about. But also just the way that. McGregor, his style compared to Mendez, the danger that leads with Mendez's style of wrestling for this to be 5 rounds on his back is very, very high. So this will be the truth, and it's also he sort of points out there's 2 sides to the McGregor bandwagon. There's people that are either this will be his comeuppance. He will lose this fight, and we will see that he's not the MMA fighter that 5 fights in the UFC and a very gentle hand-holding by Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta has shown us. Or it will the people that are completely on, like the new people that have come to the UFC via the exposure McGregor's given us. It will show that actually, do you know what? That we need people like this, and this sort of hype is whether you believe he's going to lose or not, the hype he's bringing is shining a light on the UFC like it's never been shined before, especially at this weight class. I'm hearing people get in contact with me, talking to me about UFC that have never once spoken to me about UFC just because of Conor McGregor. So either way, either if he's going to lose badly and find out that he's not a wrestler, or if he does fulfill the thing that all this hype train is about, either side of that argument, you cannot argue that Conor McGregor has been absolutely amazing for the sport in the last 12 months.
Absolutely, and you're right. I think if he beats Mendez, personally, I think he beats everybody. But there's also something else. I might have heard a whisper that and you know, totally unquotable and everything, but I might have heard a whisper that his knee isn't still 100%. Right.
Wow. You see
so,
that?
You know,
that will be interesting, and that's something that, I mean, that's what happened in the Holloway fight. He said he had to change his tactics, and that's his only decision in the UFC, and he came back very, very quickly from it and did look good against Poirier and Dennis Siver. But Mendez has got good leg kicks, and if you look at the Cody McKenzie fight, I know that's not a particularly high-level person compared to McGregor. But
Cody McKenzie is still at his prime. price tag on his shorts.
That's hilarious.
From
That's
the shop he bought them in.
That's right. He forgot his kit, didn't he? And he had to run across to his That's how funny is that? That just sums Cody McKenzie up, though, doesn't it? That's a thing. But if you look at those fights, you see Mendez has got good leg kicks, and McGregor certainly leaves his leg. He's got that wide base, that front leg out there, and that knee will get tested at some point. I mean, that was the other side of it as well. Aldo came out, and there was almost you've got to respect Conor McGregor for taking this fight. There's got to be and there's got to be a lot of pressure, not just from the UFC, but also the amount of fans that he knows have spent their hard-earned money coming over from Ireland to support him. I think he was going to fight. Go on.
It was never a question for him. I mean, I read that article where he said his coach came in and said, right, it's Mendez. And he said, they're all the same. Get out of my room. Go to sleep. Like, he didn't even think twice about it. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't a thing for him. I mean, McGregor is like the epitome of The Secret. You know the book The Secret?
Yes.
It's basically about manifesting your dreams into reality purely by thought process and belief, which leads to action. And Conor McGregor is like the absolute beacon of that way of thought. And it's so strong in him that you can see it shine out of his eyes like laser beams at weigh-ins and stuff. And I never thought I'd see Dustin Poirier wilt. And I mean, when you watch the Embedded and the Notorious and you watch them back and everything, and I know that they're, one of those things was edited by Conor's team. I think it was Notorious.
Yeah.
But you really, really do see them wilt. You really see them, like, you still thought Dustin Poirier, the light went out of his eyes, which surprised me. Especially, there's a documentary on Netflix where you see Dustin Poirier's background and
with Tim Hague, that's
stunning.
it, isn't it? Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called Fighter or something. But just to see that guy, like, just melt under Conor's gaze, it was staggering, and move up a weight class afterwards.
Exactly.
And look great, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, it's the guy that Conor just made. He made give up at the weigh-ins. Isn't it? See, I don't think that's going to happen with Mendez. I think he's too long in the tooth. But Jesus.
I also think that the short run in has probably done Mendez a few favours, that he didn't have that whole Embedded tour that Aldo had to put up with for 10 weeks going around the world with McGregor in his face, or however long it was. I think the 2 weeks run-in means they've only had a couple of phone conference calls where they've actually interacted, and they had the one on BT Sports a long time ago where Conor McGregor teabagging, said he'd put his balls on his head, which our mate Luke Benson was at. That's that's something that's worth mentioning. He's actually asked Conor McGregor a question, hasn't he? He's
probably listening right now, isn't he?
Exactly.
Luke.
Hello,
How
Luke.
are you doing? Are you all right? Yeah. No,
For
here's
those
the thing. I got one more wrinkle to throw in the story. If at the end of the fight, Mendez does that thing where he says he was injured and he took the fight anyway, that all makes a lot more sense to me. I don't think he's the kind of guy that would, but if he does, suddenly it's like, and then at that point, Frankie Edgar's going to be sitting in New Jersey just grinding his teeth. Because, do you know what I mean? They put an injured guy in, they've whatever. I mean, it wouldn't obviously come out like that.
Yeah.
But if that were the case, that would be like an moment for me. But here's the tough thing for me. I'm flying out to Benidorm with about 5 other comics on a kind of little pre-Edinburgh Festival jolly for a couple of days. My flight leaves Gatwick at 7:10. There's a cab coming for me at 5:35.
Oh no.
However it works out, I just hope it's all done. I hope Lawler comes out, starches McDonald's, they don't play too many vids, and the fight's wrapped up. Yes, before I have to jump in the cab.
Oh, mate, you could be literally... They could have just walked out with Bruce Buffer about to announce them as you're having to get into a cab. That is... That's going to be
awful.
That's a painful bit of planning there, sir. And also that means you've got to avoid all social media till you can get a copy of it and see it for yourself. That's going to hurt.
Mate, I'm going on holiday with 5 guys who have just watched it because their flight's half an hour later. Good luck with that.
Oh no, is this Kai and Sloss and that lot?
Yeah. Yeah, Kai Sloss, Andrew Stanley, Barry Castanola.
Amazing, because I got a
Top
message.
Orton.
I got a message off Kai because he got a phone call from the notorious one, Conor McGregor, for helping hook him up on Conan, wasn't it? He's the one who helped get him onto the actual big American TV chat show.
Daniel, I understand you're the reason why I'm on the show. Yeah, that sounded a bit more like Bob Geldof.
That's a merge of Bob Geldof and two. But that was he sent me the message. I thought that was wonderful. So we're gonna have to get Daniel and Kai on here to talk about that a little bit, because I imagine that when the Ireland fight does come over, those two might get some special treatment if Conor's on the card.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
Well, look, let's go back. Let's go back. You're quite right. Frankie Edgar's going to be stewing no matter what happens at the end of this, because I think he's the number one contender, and also I think he's the more sellable Aldo fight if they don't ever get the Conor McGregor one. I do think, though, from my perspective, what I've said for a while, because I am hanging on to this hype train, I think we need Conor McGregor to come through this in an impressive fashion, so that we get that Aldo fight, so that this momentum that is helping the UFC take it to the next step, this one-man show, keeps rolling. And I actually think, from my perspective, I think that his size is going to be the thing that helps him get through the wrestling and takes it into the later rounds, where he might be able to finish Mendez. Because I think Mendez is the short camp. He's gassed before in other fights. And the last 2 rounds, he's never the same as the first 3, which is a kind of silly sentence, but it's if you know what I mean. He's not as dangerous as he is in the first 3. But I think that the size of McGregor and the reach, the 8-inch reach advantage, I think he might keep him at distance and sprawl a lot for the first few rounds.
What's your prediction? Go on, get.
I'm gonna get right on. There's no fence sitting here. I think McGregor's gonna finish him in the 4th. I think it's going to be a knockout in the 4th, or a referee stoppage. I think he can do it. I think the camp behind him. I'm fully on this hype train. I want him to come through it. I think his striking and his power, I think his uppercuts particularly, are going to make Mendez think about how he enters on those takedowns. And we're going to find out. We're going to find out exactly if he has his wrestling. But I think he has to cut. I think Charles Sutton found out he had to cut 27 pounds this fight week. He is cutting 27 pounds to make weight for this fight. So I think if he makes weight and balloons back up, he's going to be a lot bigger, a lot stronger, and I think more powerful than Aldo rang Mendez's bell. It was after the bell, let's be honest. But I think McGregor, his power and his striking accuracy, I think he's going to take it. I think if he doesn't do it in the 1st and smash him, he's going to take him through into the later rounds and finish him in the 4th. Said it. There we go.
Okay, right. This is what I'm saying. Mendez gets rocked early, rallies, stays in it. That does McGregor's head in a little bit. Eventually, Mendez catches him, one of them big stupid overhand rights, brings him down to the ground, and I think takes his back and secures the guillotine, and I'm saying round 3.
Wow, look at this. I know you've put money on this, haven't you? You are a UFC betting man.
Yep.
Amazing. Well, we're going to find out. And the thing is, this is the other thing with McGregor. The Aldo fight is off the cards. I am now as excited within a week about the Mendez McGregor fight than I was about the Aldo McGregor fight. I still, obviously...
and you don't even need to see him walking slow motion through an empty Las Vegas, do you?
No, that's exactly right. We didn't need that £1 million promo. They just went straight back to the one where they just end up showing them screaming in a cage and then put the date of the fight on, and we're fine with that. That'll do. We'll take it. So maybe the UFC's learnt a few promo lessons on that. One thing that has kind of gone under the radar. This card is absolutely stacked. The rest of the card is awesome. It's absolutely brilliant. You've got some wonderful fights on there. So
Gunnar Nelson, Brandon Batch is a great fight. Matt Brown's fighting.
Tim Means. Tim the Dirty Bird Means. That is a brawler's dream, to be honest. That one. That for me, I think. And also Piquet Almeida. That is all these fights where you know you're going to see some really technical brawling is with people that come to fight.
Almeida's that 17-0 phenomenon from Brazil, isn't he? That guy that is some unbeaten superstar.
Yeah,
Or something.
He's ridiculous. I think he's 18-0, and he's finished, I think, 15 of his opponents. I've forgotten who he fought. Was it Peralta? No, it wasn't Peralta. I've forgotten who he fought last. But basically, he's looked ridiculously good striking wise. It's a hell of a test for Brad Pickett in this fight. Who did he fight? Yves Jabouin, that's it. Sorry, I just looked that up. I had to use the interweb.
Yeah.
Yves Jabouin looked great. Took him in the first round and absolutely his striking looked brilliant. And he came to fight. He did get hit a few times, took it well, and an 18-0 record going against Brad Pickett, our very own Brad Pickett, who's stepping back up the weight class. Who's your thoughts on that one? Who will you take for that fight?
Oh, I'd love Brad Pickett to win. I would love Brad Pickett to win. I've seen him live twice at Nottingham and Birmingham a couple of years ago. Saw his fight against Barboza, and then the fight that he won in Nottingham. I can't remember who that was against, on the same card as Jimmy Manua. I would love Brad Pickett to win more than anything.
Yeah.
But Jesus, they've put him in there to lose, haven't they?
Well, I think it's one of those changing of the guard fights, isn't it? They've put him against the young lion to see exactly what whether Pickett's still relevant, and to also give this guy, if he does beat Pickett, give the guy a scalp that they can really market a top 10 opponent off him next. I'm with you. I love Brad Pickett. I absolutely adore the bloke, and I think he's a phenomenal fighter. And also, I spoke to him on the podcast, and there was something about the way he was talking about his new hunger. And I'm not just talking about food, being able to eat more, going up a weight class, but his newfound hunger in the gym. And I'm hoping that rings true. I'm hoping we see a rejuvenated Brad Pickett. And it gives. Do you remember when Rory McDonald lost when he was on his way up? He lost to Carlos Condit. That changed Rory McDonald into the fighter that he is now. That completely changed him. He was a better fighter for it. And I think if Almeida suddenly hits a wall like Pickett and suddenly realises, wow, this is top 10, top 5 opponents, what have I got to do differently? That wouldn't be bad for the division either. So I'm gonna follow
How good would it be to see Pickett just Arlovsky the fuck out of it? I mean, it's been so. Do you know what I mean? Just people. I love that whole Arlovsky. Here I am, out of nowhere, had a few losses. I've just worked some shit out, got a little bit older, a little bit wiser, and now I'm taking everyone down. It's beautiful. There are so many films that are going to be made in the future that have these wonderful preset storylines about comebacks. I mean, Jesus Christ, if Hunt had just landed.
Could you imagine? That? Exactly, if he had finished him on the ground as well. Or yeah, absolutely. I agree with you that way. So yeah, I would love.
Imagine the Hunt film, he's getting the shit beaten out of him, and then he's eating KFCs, and he's all down, and then suddenly he's got that one knockout, and then you've got the montage of him taking out Chet Congo and loads of other people. And
Stefan Struve breaking his jaw.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Making that phone call to the UFC, begging to fight for him, getting the shot, and then building it up to that point. He was so close to having that belt around his waist. I'm
just here to knock a bloke out. How do you feel about your fight, Mark Hunt? I was all right.
He has got the worst post-fight interviews. I think we've. I
love it though.
So I'm going to go Pickett on that one. Nelson Thatch, who have you got?
Nelson all day.
Look at that.
Love Gunny.
Love a bit of Gunny.
Come on,
Gunny Nelson. There we go. I think this will be difficult because Thatch is coming off of that Benson Henderson embarrassment where he gets choked out on the floor. Benson
had Jesus our Saviour on his side.
Oh, you're absolutely right. He did all things through Christ. So let's not forget that.
Exactly.
I'm going Nelson as well. I really want that. I love him as a personality, even though he's got none.
Nelson by crucifix, just to hammer the point home.
Oh, God is not on your side, Thatch. Stevens versus Bermudez. That's an interesting fight as well. Who have you got?
Bermudez all day.
Bermudez. I think you're right there. And then McDonald Lawler. Who are you taking on the McDonald Lawler?
Lawler's in this whole bracket of guys that have been counted out. Like
Absolutely. Yeah, you look at
Hunt,
he's
worked some stuff out. He doesn't spar in the gym. He's got an old head. He doesn't get nervous. You know what I mean? He's faced Jesus Christ. He's look at the last couple of fights. Who'd have thought that a few years ago? I think, you know, if he beats Christ, how have I forgotten his name? Who did he beat? Beard wrestler
Johnny Hendricks. Yeah, big rig.
How did I forget Johnny Hendricks? I mean, if you can beat Johnny Hendricks like that twice, I just think Lawler's like next level. He's worked some shit out. He's got wiser. He's just mentally, I think, in a brilliant place. And he's a 2-1 underdog. And I think he's. I think
that's crazy odds.
I hope he is anyway.
I think that's crazy odds for Lawler. I think it as well. I just think he's it's the old GSP thing. I said it in last week's one as well. McDonald's the martial artist. Lawler is a fighter, and he's got all the skills. He's grown. He does spar now. That's one thing he did. Say he's changed since he's back sparring with ATT, and if you look at their roster of monsters down there, then he's jumped from no sparring to into a shark tank literally. But he said that has definitely helped him in the last few years with his improvements in the octagon. I'm going Lawler as well. Really love his story, love his background. He's old school in the new era, and still completely relevant and still changing as well. He's personality wise, he's enjoyable to watch now on some of the media stuff he does and the countdowns and bits like that. Whereas before he didn't sort of play that game. So all about the Lawler. Any other fights on that card that I want to highlight? What about Neil Seery versus Louis Smolka? What do you think of that one?
I don't care. I'm going to watch that one.
Come on, sir. Do you know what? I love Neil Seery. Neil Seery makes me happy.
Hang on. No, I've got it wrong. Neil Seery's the little Irish guy.
That's right. They come
really
on the Irish.
Fast Irish guy.
Yes.
And
he fought Pickett in short notice when he first came into the UFC.
He was like a postman, wasn't he?
He works in a electrical warehouse. That's right. Yeah.
Oh, that's it. I hope Seery wins.
I do too. All for Neil Seery. So there we go. Two other bits just to touch on.
I'll be honest, I do find that with all these cards now, there are some fights, you know, it never used to be the case, but there's some fights I'm just like, I'm going to go make a cup of tea or something, you know. I mean, and it's funny because if you're emotionally invested in people, if you know them, if you've seen them on a tough program, even if they're boring fighters and you've seen a little bit of their emotional or their
background, their story,
tough, or the embeddeds, it makes you invested. It makes it more of a soap opera. But if it's just two guys, and I know this is a crap perspective, but if it's two guys in a much lower weight class, it's a lot harder to get me interested. I don't know if I'm turning into more of a casual fan as time goes on, or I've just been made that way just through the amount of cards. I mean, Jesus, it's 3 cards this week, isn't it?
I know.
Coming from Sunday.
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, there's some fights I can just skip now, which never used to be the case.
Yeah, well, there's so much content, and also you're quite right. Like even McGregor or Mike Tyson or anyone like that, if we didn't know some of their story, we wouldn't. We didn't get to see all the bravado around, and we just saw them walk from from the gym to the octagon, then you wouldn't be as invested. That there is that thing about building fighters, building a story, and the UFC do it brilliantly on one side, and then on the other side there are just names that pop up and you think, I've never heard of this person. He's got 3 fights in the UFC and I can't remember one of them. That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah,
exactly. So let's move quickly across, because I want to talk 2 things very quickly off you. Did you see the launch of the Reebok kits?
No.
Have you seen them?
No.
Have you?
I've not seen them.
Oh my God! Right, you need to go and check these out. They're awful, mate. They are absolutely awful. I was thinking when they signed up with Reebok and they were talking about smartening the sport up.
Are they worse than Dennis Hallman's pants?
Oh, do you know? I would take Dennis Hallman's pants any day of the week over the Reebok kit. They're awful. It's like all I can say is the design. Whoever they got to design it for some £70 million contract that they've signed with the UFC, it's just got a big blazing UFC in a stripe down the middle at an angle, small Reebok sign top left, and then the fighters' names on the back. And because of did you see that they spelt quite a few of the fighters' names wrong on the launch?
Oh, for Christ's sake!
Yeah, they Gilbert Melendez. They spelled his first name wrong. They rather than
how can you fuck up Gilbert?
and not the Melendez bit. Giblet they called him. And who else was on there? Oh yeah, do you know that they also, because of a legal thing, they had to use their proper first names. So Beck Rawlings became Rebecca Rawlings, and Filthy Tom Lawler is now Filthy Thomas Lawler, which is just which just made me laugh no end. I don't understand how they could get it so wrong, to be honest. And when you see it, I remember when I was growing up, we didn't have a lot of money. So when I could afford my first, I got bought my first sports top with a brand on it. I remember I bought the top with the biggest Nike tick that I could find, and it was just because it was just a big tick across my chest, and it looked. Now I look back at it, it was a terrible choice of shirt. And what they've done is they've done exactly the same with the UFC. They just slapped UFC across it. They're all the same colours, and apart they do have a thing where they're attached to their different countries. But then there's things like the Cain Velasquez. He's Mexican, which on his thing, which is fine. But then when you look at somebody like Anthony Pettis, who's also got a Latino background, they just put him as American. So I don't know whether they got a choice for which they went for, or if it's the way the UFC just got to choose to brand them. But it's done so badly, and I think the identity. Go on.
I reckon it's like, do you know when the England team bring out a new kit and everyone goes, "Oh, that's shocking," and then within about 2 games, just never gets mentioned ever. Do you think it's going to be like that? Do you reckon it's going to be like everyone's going to be like, "Oh, this sucks," and it's different, and it's kind of like in the early 2000s when Beckham came out with a new haircut, and everyone was like, "Christ, that's weird, that's awful," and then 10 seconds later, everybody had it.
It will be one of those things. I think there's a bit of fire going on now because it is so and it's the opposite of different. They're so the same. All these fighters' identities. You think about Brad Pickett walking down with his vest and his trilby and newspaper, no branding, and then you think about what's his name, Henry Cejudo, coming down with his sort of almost Tarzan gear and his big gold shorts Huh?
Henry Cejudo's got that strange 80s haircut thing going on.
Yes, I do love it. There's a lot of quiff there, isn't there?
Blow-dried quiff thing.
Yeah. But basically, it's going to take away a lot of the fighter's identity, and I just think they could have done it better. I think I think they'll learn. I heard someone else in an article say this. That actually, as it evolves, maybe they'll learn that having something more. Because it almost represents it is like a football kit. It represents who you support, and if they're all the same, bar this tiny name, and it's only a small strip on the back where they've got their name. They're not going to sell as many as if they had Big Rig with his big beard on the front of it, or any of the sort of personality things. So I think you need to have a look at it and see what you think. But it was disappointing on my end. One person that was disappointed by that and then disappointed us was Melendez. He failed his post-fight drug test after his fight. What did you think of that?
Well, giblets.
Giblet Melendez.
Giblets Melendez. Well, yeah, I mean, that has he. I did see that, and he's the first guy that with the new guidelines. He's out for a year now, and then if they get popped again, it's like 2 years, and then if they get popped again after that, it's 3 years or something, isn't it?
Yeah.
But Gilbert Melendez was kind of like the last person that you thought would pop. Well, I guess no, someone like Silva was the last person, but Melendez, yeah, I mean, he's just with that gym he's at with the Diaz brothers and stuff, they just seem like they would be the last people to take that kind of thing. So, also, I don't know how people can, I don't know how these guys can do it now in this era where, there's going to be so many changes, and the IV, banning the IVs, there's going to be so many changes to, so many fighters are just going to be so much, there's going to be a real shifting of the landscape. You know what I mean? With the IVs banned, with the steroids stepped up, the TRT ban, I think it's really going to change so much. You might even see Bisping become champion, for God's sake.
Wow, can you imagine that? That would be a true test of. There was that thing when they found all the cycling, the Lance Armstrong thing, when they actually tested who would have won. Who would have actually won it clean? It was something like 15th position would have won one of the Tour de France's, so that showed how many people were actually doing it. My thing with this is Melendez has come straight out and said, yes, I've got caught, I accept the I've tested positive, I accept the punishment. But what he also said is, and this is something that always frustrates me, is he said, it was a supplement and I should have read the side of the packet. He said that was my mistake, and that's just bollocks, isn't it? It's got to be any fighter at that level, at that sort, would be absolutely so critical about what they were putting in their body, especially with all the new tests and all the magnifying glass over athletes on sport taken, and in this sport in particular, especially after like Anderson Silva. How can you throw us that excuse? How stupid do you think we are that I didn't read the side of the packet? That's just a tired excuse, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. I mean,
I'm more disappointed in that than I am in him just not done taking the thing. I'd rather he just came out and went, yeah, I took it. All right, I'm very sorry. I accept the ban. But then just giving us the bollocks. That's more disappointing to me as somebody with the reputation of Gilbert Melendez.
Yeah. You know the way science works. What will happen now is that they'll go, right, so XXX is going to be picked up, whatever. So people are going to be formulating. It's like sort of the way drugs are legal till they're illegal.
Yeah.
Like MCAT, whatever. People are going to be formulating new performance-enhancing drugs. They're going to be like, hang on, this has a compound that will increase your sort of energy, whatever, that can't be picked up in a test, and then they'll invent a new test for it, and they'll find it and do it. And it might be that shit's going on. It might be someone say, well, look, this is something that won't get picked up, yada, 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 and then it does.
Well,
so it's that. It's possibly something like that, because that people are sort of tinkering with steroids and stuff and trying to make them legal in a certain way, and it's all clamping down. But overall, it is a good thing. It's just going to be interesting to see what it does to the fights and the fighters on the whole. It's going to change the entire game. Like, look at the way Vitor looked in his last fight. It just looked totally different.
It's great, and Bigfoot Silva, people like that. I mean, first thing with the Gilbert Melendez one is, if he was knowingly taking those steroids, I'd get a new supply, because his body's terrible to say he's on steroids, isn't it? I've got a better body than that. But then, I think you're right. It's a real interesting time. The next 24 months are going to be even we might even see some massive short-term changes with the new, especially the IV one coming in September, October. The amount of fighters that are going to go up weight classes because they can't rehydrate or replenish. And then Mike Dolce was talking this week about it actually will increase the amount of the potential for serious brain damage if you don't give the amount of, if fighters cut to try and get the advantage in the weight, and they don't replenish the water that they need for the brain to get back to where it needs to be, because they are different beasts. If you look at Conor McGregor, the week of the fight, he's completely different on that weight cutting journey than he is 2 weeks, 3 weeks before, and a day after. It's amazing. Go on.
No, I was going to say, I hate to bring a halt to this, but I've actually got to go and strap some gloves on myself now. I'm going out for a boxing session. I'm going to do a bit of sparring because Kai Humphries is booking potentially a comedian's boxing event in February, and shit's getting real. I might, if it all goes ahead, I'm going to be having my first sort of little boxing match.
I love it, mate.
I'm literally just about to strap on my shoes and.
I love it. Well, we wouldn't want to be the reason that you look back and thought, if I'd got that one more round in way back then I might have won that fight. Do you know who you're fighting?
No, not yet, but I hope they don't drugs test because I'm on everything.
Well, look, mate, we wish you the best with that.
Right now.
Where can people find you? Just chuck us your Twitter and your website, and then we'll let you go and get sweaty and start beating people up. All right, mate?
Lovely. So my Twitter handle is @MiloComedy, and my website is milomccabe.co.uk. And I'm just hoping I come out of this like an MMA Nostradamus.
Mate, well, you set my MMA brain going with all the Lesnar and stuff like that. Really appreciate the time. Thank you ever so much, mate, and we'll speak to you again soon. Have a good one in the gym, all right?
Cheers, brother.
Take care, man. Bye. So that was Milo McCabe. Thank you, Milo, for joining us once again. As I said, he was my first guest on the podcast, so it was great to get him back on. And his insight is wonderful. I love his perspective on the UFC 189 wicked web that's weaving around it, but also his thoughts on the Reebok deal and the Melendez stuff. Really appreciate that, and sorry I didn't mean to infringe on your upcoming boxing training. You need to get that done, especially if you've got a bout coming up in February. Keep us posted on that. Let us know who you're fighting. Always interesting to know if comics are going to punch each other in the face. It does happen occasionally, I will be honest, but not usually in a ring or with a ref. But yeah, that would be interesting to follow that. And if you want to follow Milo, @MiloComedy on Twitter, and also milomccabe.co.uk on the interweb. Great comedian, lovely bloke, well worth checking out and seeing if he's in your area. On top of that, thank you to MMA UK. Once again, a huge thank you to those people for sponsoring the podcast and helping me get it out there. Follow them @WeAreMMA UK on Twitter, /original MMA UK on Facebook. And also, if you want to check their page out for all the articles and news they've got about the MMA world, MMAUK.net on the interweb. And if you want to help me make the podcast more popular and get it out there, then you can do that very, very easily, and I truly would appreciate it. Just go on to iTunes, give the podcast a 5-star rating. The more stars it gets, the more visible it is, and the more listeners I get. So I'd appreciate if you wanted to do that for me. Or if you know people who are also into MMA, if you just send them a link to the podcast, let them make their own minds up, and it'd be great if you could help me spread the word. Absolutely wonderful. It's growing as it is, but if you can help me give it a little push, I would appreciate that. On top of that, don't forget the competition with Manchester Beer Keller on Facebook. That's right, I'll put the link up. Manchester Beer Keller on Facebook, and they've got a Conor McGregor signed photo they're giving away. Just go on their page, like it, share the photo in the share the competition post, and you will be in with a chance of winning that marvellous prize. I say marvellous prize. It could be worth £10 million on Sunday, or it might be worth 10p, depending on the result and the manner of the result. So we'll wait and see for that. Again, next week we've got more exciting guests for you. I've got a couple of fighters. Hopefully Jake Matthews will be one of those coming on the podcast. I've also got a BAMMA fighter, very exciting BAMMA fighter, I'm looking forward to talking to. And on top of that, I'll be breaking down UFC 189 with a good mate of mine. Just need to, and if you go on Twitter, I'll let you know who it is. Just need to make sure they can fit into the slot that we're trying to do the recording in. So wait and brace yourself for that. But enjoy the weekend. This is going to be a hell of a fight week. Thanks again for the support. I'll speak to you again next week. Have a good one.